Well, hello everyone. It's Dr. Phil, as scheduled, checking in, and I really hope you guys are messaging all your friends and telling everyone to join in when we're having these conversations. I hope you've also noticed that I've been responding to your comments and questions on Facebook as well, because I'm really wanting to. I'm really wanting to uh, communicate with you, share with you, um, and give you a place that you can, um, I don't know, voice your thoughts, feelings, opinions about what's going on right now, because I'm just getting inundated with so many comments and questions about um, what's happening right now. Um, as I said the other day, this quarantine has stretched out so long, and people are talking about depression and anxiety and loneliness and the stress of having to work or not being able to work and being a teacher for their kids. And the kids are showing all sorts of uh, signs of stress and tension from not being around their friends, not going to school, not having competition, not having extracurriculars. So don't think for a second that you're alone in all of this, because you certainly are not. This is happening really with everybody, and not everybody, but it's certainly happening to an awful lot of people. And I just want you to know that. And so whenever I come on here and talk about it, I hearken back to what a lot of people say to me on the message boards and even on the street. And that is, you know what? A lot of us don't have insurance for psychological services. And if we do, we don't know who to call. We don't know who to ask. I mean, how do you know one psychologist or psychiatrist from another? How do you know if somebody's good, if they know what they're doing, or if they're going to be just talking to you about weird things or really getting into your problems with solutions and trying to help you? So I'm just trying to be a common sense resource to try to give you some help. And if one of the questions I get a lot is, Dr. Phil, if we are asking for help right now, what kind of therapy do you recommend? What kind of help do you think we should ask for? And look, it's different strokes for different folks, but I'm a huge advocate of what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And these are people that help you examine your internal dialogue, help you examine your thinking. And you might think, well, I can do that on my own. But it's not really as simple as it sounds. And sometimes it's really hard to look at ourselves. And so, you know, it's difficult sometimes to do that. And when you get somebody that's a professional and they know what they're doing at the same time, they can really help you see if you're having self-destructive thoughts, if in some way you're programming yourself for failure. And so I really recommend that. They don't go into a lot of things you don't want to go into, but they say, all right, let's look at your life. They treat your thoughts as behaviors, and behaviors can change. And that's not the only kind of thing that can help you, but cognitive behavioral therapy is really effective. It's an evidence-based therapy. It helps with anxiety, stress, depression, things of that nature. So if you're looking for someone and you want my opinion, I would just ask, what's their orientation? and that's my favorite. I've also been asked if people think teletherapy is effective. There's a lot of research about that, where you're talking to someone like you're talking to me right now, but it's highly interactive. And the research is very good about that, actually. In fact, there are studies that suggest that teletherapy is in some ways more effective than face-to-face therapy. And two of the things that are positives are people feel less conspicuous when they're not there in person. So they tend to be more forthcoming. They don't feel quite so embarrassed about talking about certain things. And they tend to be more compliant with their appointments because they can do it from home. They don't have to get dressed, get in the car, get on the subway or the bus or whatever, and go to the therapist office. They can do it right from home. Now, is it better? I'm not saying it's better, but I'm saying research suggests that there's very little, if anything, lost by doing teletherapy. So don't poo-poo that by saying, "Oh, I'm just talking to somebody on my computer." If it's a certified and licensed doctoral level therapist and they're trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, I think that's a really good combination to help you. What I don't want you to do is nothing. If you're experiencing depression and anxiety and loneliness right now, reach out for some help. There are also support groups on the internet that you can get in. Be careful that you don't have people in there that are really destructive and trolls that are on there just to try to disrupt people's lives. That's not a good thing. So be careful where you go, but these support groups can be very, very helpful. And if you're feeling really backed up against it, look, the hotlines that are out there are very, very helpful. And you need to know, if you call an anxiety hotline, a panic disorder hotline, a suicide prevention hotline, they're not going to force you to do something. They're not going to ask you who you are. They're not going to lean on you. They're just going to listen to you. They're going to offer you support and advice and maybe tell you who you can call in your zip code or your area, but they're not going to come crash down your door. They're not going to trace your phone number and try to find out who you are and force you to do something. So I really hope that you'll use those resources that are out there. There's a big spike in divorce right now because couples are spending an awful lot of time together, and maybe they're getting on each other's nerves because of the stress of not enough money to go around. Kids are there. You're having to do all of these different tasks at one time. So, pressure gets to everybody, and we tend to vent it on those that are closest to us. So ask yourself this: are you venting on the people that you love the most just because they're a ready target? Is it really them that you're frustrated with, or are you frustrated because you can't work right now? Are you frustrated because you feel helpless against this invisible pandemic that's out there? Are you frustrated because you don't feel like you're fulfilling your role as a provider or protector for your family, whether you're a single mother or a father or whatever? Are you really frustrated about things that don't have anything to do with your partner or your children, and you're venting against them just because they're in the line of fire? And if that's the case, you really want to take a step back and ask yourself, what am I really upset about? What am I really, really frustrated, anxious, panicked, stressed about? And maybe you can just be honest about that. I've often said, if you take the word anger out of your vocabulary and replace it with hurt, fear, or frustration, it becomes a different dialogue. And that can really be helpful sometimes. So be careful that you're not just venting at the people that are around you just because they happen to be there, when really it doesn't have anything to do with them. So think about that. If you're trapped right now because you're spending a lot of time together, ask yourself, how can I do something really positive with this? There's an old saying about raising kids, and that is that the hours are long and the years are short. If you're at a soccer game and you're freezing and you're standing over on the sideline, those hours can feel really long. But when you look back on it after the fact, the years were really short. They flew by in a fast hurry. Don't realize that later. Realize that now. Realize it right now and say, I'm not going to let these years be short. This is a time when we're forced to stay home together. How can I use that to my advantage? How can I make this quality time with my son or daughter or my wife or husband? How can I do things that when I was working 60 hours a week, I just didn't have time to get interested in their video games or their music or go out in the yard with them and throw the ball around or go ride bikes or something. Well, now you do have time to do that. Maybe you say, I wish I was working so I could pay the bills. But if you can't do that right now, there are other kinds of currency. So seize this opportunity to do that. Turn it to your advantage if you can. But just know I'm going to be continuing to go on Facebook and answer questions and comments. I think I responded to 20 or 30 in the last few days. It was, answers to very specific questions. And I have some now. One is from Karen Yeatman Treadway. She says, I worry about abuse to women and kids who can't go anywhere. I pray for them. Karen, I share your concern. A colleague of mine recently who is a psychiatrist that works with the Department of Child and Family Services, in fact, he just retired, said that referrals are down as much as 60% to the Department of Child and Family Services. And why is that? It's largely because children are not in school. They're not at the brick and mortar classrooms where teachers, administrators, and other workers who are mandated reporters are not able to see these kids showing up with bruises or hear them talking about verbal abuse or sexual molestation. It isn't that it has stopped. It's just that people that usually report it because they see evidence of it aren't able to witness that now, which is one of the reasons that we need to get children back in school as quickly as we possibly can. But you're quite right. These people that are quarantined and so they're isolated with their abuser. My wife Robin is one of the foremost ambassadors in the fight against domestic violence, and she often says isolation is one of the number one tools of the abuser. In fact, Robin's here. Slide in here a minute, will you? We've got a question here from Karen that says, I worry about abuse. Here it is right here. Yes. I worry about abuse to women and kids who can't go anywhere, and I pray for them.
Yes, Karen, I completely agree with you because I share your concern and your worry. Through this entire pandemic, that has been my number one concern, my number one worry. In fact, I have to pretty much check myself on almost every day that I become almost obsessed with the worry and the concern. So I really do kind of put a check on myself, and just like you, I will just stop and I will pray about them. And that kind of helps me get refocused. And what I have to say to you and to everyone else is I will suggest that we all get proactive about these women and these children who are now quarantined in their homes with their abusers. And when I say proactive, I suggest, and what I do is, if you know someone that is in an abusive relationship, and so therefore they're quarantined in their home full time with an abuser, and just as Philip said, it's the number one tool an abuser will use is isolation. And so with the pandemic, it's just the prime situation for abuse. And so I suggest that everyone who has someone they're concerned about, family member, a friend, someone in their church, if you know someone, this is when you really ramp up your concern and the time that you reach out to them. And I suggest that you also form what I call just an army of friends and caretakers that will also gather with you and become just very active in reaching out to these families, calling them on the phone, stepping on the porch, ringing their doorbell, then stepping back and saying, hi, this is something new we've decided to do during this pandemic. We're reaching out to everyone in the neighborhood, or we're reaching out to everyone in our church. We're reaching out to everyone we know and love. And we just want to tell you that we're going to start doing this daily. And maybe just then remove yourself from their presence, but they're going to know what you're doing. And you just form as large of an army as you can. And do this with everyone who does have a family member or a friend that's in a situation, or even if they don't, just ask them, please help me help them. Help me take care of them. And I think you'll be surprised at how large that circle will grow. And when these victims understand, oh, wow, I've got someone that's going to knock on my door or ring my phone every day to check on me and see if I'm okay. And if anyone in that circle has baked goods, if they want to bake something, say, we're bringing this to you. But as long as they know, I've got someone who cares about me, whether they're a stranger or it's a loved one. I've got someone who cares about me, and they're going to be checking on me every day. It's going to bring a peace and a joy and a love to their life, and it's going to bring that to your life as well. I know Philip is always saying that whatever you want most in your life, you're going to get it when you give that back. So just imagine how wonderful you're going to feel when you know not only are you giving back love and peace and joy, but you're giving it to someone who lives in fear every day, wondering, is today the day that I may lose my life? So that's my suggestion. And then secondly, of course, everyone go to whengeorgiasmiled.org. We have so much information on our website. We have the Aspire Initiative, an interactive program that you can go onto the site and follow along with. Games, we have games, interactive games. We have interactive tests that you can take to find out, am I an abuser? Am I being abused? Sometimes you don't even know that. So it's a very wonderful educational program put together, helped by all of our Dr. Phil Advisory Board members who are brilliant. So I suggest everyone go through there and do that interactive program and become educated so you can then pay that forward. Then we have our Aspire app that can be downloaded on someone's phone. And that's probably not possible right now during this pandemic, but you can actually use those tools and do what I'm suggesting. So that's what I have to add.
Yeah, what she said. I agree 100%. And you said it real fast, so I want to repeat it. It's when Georgia smiled, ED. Not when Georgia smiles. It's when Georgia smiled.
A lot of people want to say smiles, but it's when Georgia smiled, because it's named in honor of my mother, who has passed away. So I try to explain to everyone why it's when Georgia smiled.org. That's also something everyone should remember, whengeorgiasmiled.org.
Yeah, and she named it after her mother because it was really based on her peace of mind. Every time things were rocky in their family, she said when she saw her mother, Georgia, smile, she knew it was going to be okay.
That's right.
So when Georgia smiled, she knew we're going to be okay.
We're going to be okay. We're going to be safe.
It's going to be good today. And
that's the same sense of peace, the same sense of safety that we hope to bring to those who are suffering right now. So please go to whengeorgiasmiled.org and read all about that. But if you can't do that right now, at least start forming that army of helpers.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing to that. We're spending a lot of time on that one question because it's so busy, but there's one other thing too. The abuser, if he knows this group is coming by every day, he's going to know if I hurt this person, if I hurt my spouse, they're going to see it. They're going to be coming by, and if she doesn't come to the door, they're going to want to know why. And if she does come to the door with a black eye, then they're going to see it. They're going to be calling for a wellness check by calling the sheriff and saying, hey, there's somebody over here that I think is getting beat on. I think they're in danger. And you can do that as well. You can call the sheriff's department and say, I'm concerned about this person. I'm asking for a wellness check. And you don't have to give your name. They will just go do a wellness check, and they go unannounced, and they knock on that door and say, I want to see Alice Jones. I want to see Becky Jenkins. I want to see whoever. Bring them to the door right now, or I'm coming in. And so there are some things you can do. What a great question. Karen Yeatman Treadway, thank you so much. Stay with me. You may have some comments on these. Tex Garcia says, Dr. Phil, how do you help someone that doesn't want help, lost their family, house, everything, and now digging deeper into drugs? Look, Tex, I will just tell you this. Everybody wants help. They just don't know they want help. They may not feel like they're worthy of help. They may not feel like they're helpable, but nonetheless, I can tell you, there's not anybody I've ever helped, drug addict, heroin addict, whatever, how hard they ran, how hard they resisted, that once they got better, they didn't come back and say, thank you so much for not giving up on me. Thanks for not listening to my bullshit. Thanks for not letting me be rude and put you off. Thanks for not listening to me because I wasn't myself. Thanks for not surrendering to the disease and saying, okay, we'll just let this one die. Everybody that's hurting wants help. They just don't know how to ask for it. So don't listen to the drugs. When you're talking to this person, they're in an altered state of consciousness. It's the drugs talking. It's not the person talking. It's the drugs talking. Don't listen to that. The real person is in there. The real person is being held captive. The real person is hostage to the chemicals and the altered neurotransmitters in their brain. So don't believe that. They can tell you to stop meddling, mind your own business, get out of their life, leave them alone. They don't need you. You don't know what you're talking about. You're a meddling so-and-so. Take it from me. I've been listening to it for 45 years, and I just keep wading right on in. It doesn't make any difference. Everybody wants help. Arthur Lee says, you can't just ask for help. Good luck telling a doctor that you use illegal drugs, booze daily, or are suicidal. That's now a permanent record. If an employer finds out, you're done. Well, you know, I wish I could tell you, Arthur, that that's not the case. But the truth is there's supposed to be confidentiality. You're supposed to be able to go to an employee assistance program with anonymity and ask for help. But I do know that sometimes just even going to an employee assistance program can create problems. I do get that. But I also realize that you have to make a decision. If you really are in a destructive circle, I mean, it's like a concentric circle and they're ever tightening around the drain and you're getting ready to go down, or if you truly are suicidal, then you have to weigh that against a possible negative impact on your job. And I tell you what, if it's your life or impacting your job, I'll take your life every single time. And if you feel like you're being prejudiced because of asking for help on your job, there are remedies for that as well, maybe legal, and I hate to go that route, but the truth is, if it comes down to your job or your life wins every time. So that's no excuse. Try other things, go outside of your job, use your insurance and go somewhere else. But don't ever just let your life be taken from you by drugs, alcohol, or suicide because of some job. Jobs come and go. Your life, they issue you one. and you need to protect it at all costs. That's just my common sense approach to it. Tara Barthelmus. Dr. Phil, there's also a spike in people with eating disorders. I tend to be a binge compulsive eater. It's awful. I've gained 50 pounds and really depressed from the weight gain and from having this issue with food. Well, you're right, because stress triggers all kinds of maladaptive coping mechanisms, right? Stress triggers alcohol, stress triggers drugs, stress triggers my inability to say stress triggers, but it does trigger bulimia, anorexia, overeating, poor eating habits. It triggers all sorts of things. It truly does. And what you have to do is resolve to yourself, I'm going to deal with psychological issues psychologically. I'm going to deal with medical issues medically. I'm going to deal with nutritional issues nutritionally. It's when you cross over and start trying to deal with psychological issues nutritionally that you get into a problem. A fork can be a dangerous weapon. And if you're trying to say, I'm going to comfort myself or alleviate my stress by eating comfort food, that's why we call it comfort food. You eat some of these real high carbohydrate, high sugar foods, and they go into your digestive system and it pulls all of the blood into that area and it warms you up and your stress goes down for a short period of time. But that doesn't last very long, which is why you got to go get another fix. So you're back in there eating more comfort food again. That's not the way to handle your stress. So you truly have to say, okay, look, it's stress that's triggering this. So I need a true stress coping mechanism. I need relaxation training. I need mediation or meditation. I need some way to deal with this. What is the stress trigger? What can I do to alleviate that? Those are the things that you have to work on. I think we've lost our link for a minute here, so I'll vamp. And I can see by the clock that we're about out of time because I've got a 6 o'clock interview that I have to do. So guys, we've talked about a lot. Holly James says Thanksgiving is going to be tough. Cindy MacDonald asked if we have suggestions for people who have mental illness. We talked about that with some of the teletherapy that's there. So I've covered what I can. Thank you for coming in and talking about building these armies for people. Guys, I'm going to try to get back to you again at the first of the week. We'll give you a heads up. We've had literally hundreds of thousands of people signing on and following these things that I'm doing. Facebook, this is just you and me. No TV cameras, nothing. I'm just wanting to sign on and say, hey, I'm thinking about you. I so appreciate you checking in and signing on to have these conversations. And I'm going to be continuing to get on Facebook as well.
Why so hard on yourself? Everybody's going.
Yeah, and Tara, really don't be so hard on yourself. Everybody's dealing with this.
Everybody's dealing with their. Everyone's eating too much. Everyone's maybe not working out so much. Everyone's not really staying as focused on everything like they were before the pandemic. So I'm just saying, lighten up on yourself a little bit.
Yeah, work on your stress, and you deserve to give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Guys, got to sign off. We'll see you next time. Thanks for checking in. It means a lot.